Welcome to another edition of Futurartist Records Presents. My guest today is a music educator and the booking agent and manager for a multi-Grammy nominee in the jazz world. Please welcome Priscilla Rahn.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Thanks for having me here.
Yes, thanks for coming up. I know you drove a while and it's drizzly outside, so I appreciate you coming in.
You bet.
We had spoken before the show to kind of get a feel for what we wanted to speak on. And as we were talking, I realized you've had a lot of roles.
Yes.
You have been a competitive bodybuilder. You have been a trophy girl for the NPC. You've been a competitive tennis player. You've directed barbershop. You've been a musician. You're a wife, a mother, a booking agent, a manager. You've done a lot of things. And the more we talked, the more came out that you've got certain things that help you with this, no matter what it is, whether it's being a musician or a manager or a mother. And so I'm going to kind of throw this out at you. We've come up with some bullet points here, and I'd like you to just go through them and speak to them, and then I'll just interrupt if I have questions. How does that sound?
Sure, it sounds great. So we did come up with a bullet of 10 ideas that I really would like to discuss to help artists that are coming up and really wanting to be successful in something that they are passionate about. And so the first idea that I've learned about is just being humble. As artists, we have a lot of experiences and we meet people in the industry, and there's so many talented people. But I've noticed that the most successful people tend to be the most humble, and then those that are still trying to make it tend to be more self-serving and arrogant, and forgetting that everybody's working really hard to do well and to approach things in a way that you don't act like you're better than somebody else, or that you're more successful, because you rely on these relationships in order to be successful.
Do you think that the difference between the humility of someone who has a lot of experience and kind of the ego of the folks that are moving up is because of the perception of how the industry works, and not realizing that there's always going to be somebody better, no matter how good you get?
Sure. I mean, there are successful artists who are arrogant and have huge egos. And I think even as musicians, there is a healthy amount of ego, because you're putting yourself out there on stage. There's a difference between being confident and really pumping yourself up and staying true to the course. But it's different when you're interacting with people. You always want to treat everybody, from the CEO down to the cleaning person, with the same level of respect. And so that's what I've noticed in the industry, that those people that are the most successful tend to treat people with a lot more humanity than those who forget that everybody, you could be successful one day and not successful the next day. So,
and a great word to use, humanity. I bet people have a disconnect sometimes with that. So right.
And so that ties into my next bullet point of just having a high level of integrity and being principled. When you are trying to get gigs and you're trying to get your name out there, you want to be the kind of person that's dependable, that shows up prepared. And a lot of artists are not performing by themselves, they're performing with a band. And so you're having to ask 5 or 6 other people to be at the same level you are, with integrity, showing up to rehearsal prepared, showing up on time, treating everybody else around them with integrity. Even on the set today, there's so many other people behind the scenes. And you rely on everybody in the team to do their job with integrity and to be principled. And those characteristics are important for booking agents and for people who own clubs that are looking for bands to come in and entertain their customers. So there's so many different layers of interaction that's necessary to have integrity. And as a booking agent, I'm an extension of the artist. It's not just that we're separate people. When they interact with me, when a club interacts with me, they're basically interacting with Darren Rahn. And anybody who knows Darren knows that he's very sweet, he's very kind, he's very generous, and I can't be just like, here are my demands, because then they won't want to book the artist. So those are things that people need to remember, is just be kind to people, have integrity, do your job, and be truthful and honest.
How does that work? Because you've got a stage persona and then you've got your real life, and they aren't always the same, but they have to tie together. So when you're talking about integrity, does that stop when your stage persona takes over, do you think? Does it take a back seat to it? How does that work?
No, because on stage you're in entertainment mode, but you also, like I said, you have the band behind you, and if you're a solo artist, you want to give love to your band.
Right.
And when you're promoting the show, what's on your poster? Is it just you as the artist, or do you promote your band members that are backing you up on your Facebook post or Instagram post? Are you also talking about, hey, I've got this killer band that's going to be backing me up? So it's not just about what we see, and there is not a separation. You can be entertaining but still have a high level of integrity.
Gotcha.
Acknowledge the sound guy, acknowledge the club owner, acknowledge all of the people that made it happen, because they're the ones that are going to continue to have you back.
Yeah, I think that's something that's important to look at and understand, because I think a lot of people look at the business side and the entertainment side, and they draw a line between them.
Right.
And when they're not doing their business, they're being the entertainer.
Right.
And when they're, and vice versa. So, being able to tie those together so it stays fluid.
Well, that is your business card. Your show and the people that are in the audience, you never know who's going to be there. You never know who's videotaping you and putting it on their Facebook. So that is your business card. And when booking agents are looking for new acts and they happen to come across a video that someone posted of you and they see a little bit of your persona, they go, yeah, that's someone that's high class that I don't have to worry about booking.
Sure.
And the reputation that you build. So you always have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
That you're booking your next show at your current show.
Right.
And so the personal relationships that you build when you are striving to become a big artist, if you have a wife, a family, sometimes you might find yourself having to make a choice about, in order for me to be successful, I'm going to have to leave my family and go on the road and tour. Or if I don't do this thing, I might not ever work again.
Right.
So you don't want to compromise your relationships and your family for any gig or any job, because it's not worth it. And you can see in industries, whether it's bodybuilding or whether it's in the music industry, that a lot of people get laser focused on the success of what they think is success, when the true success is having a healthy family that loves you and supports you, that's going to be there when the lights turn off and everything is done and everybody goes home. Who are you going home to? It's those people in your family and your children that are going to be there to support you. And gigs might come and gigs might not come. And so you cannot focus on success by the standard of success.
Sure.
What people appear to be success, because and then you have to define what success is for you.
Yeah.
If success for you is getting a Grammy or getting a trophy or getting an accolade, then you need to be careful about forming close relationships with people, because you can't sacrifice that to the point where they become insignificant.
Right. Do you find, having been through these processes and still going through these processes, that making sure you maintain those relationships actually strengthens the other side of it?
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons why Darren and I get along so well is we're both musicians. I understand the industry, so I can support him better. And it's a great partnership for me to manage him and book him, because I know him really well. I get to travel with him. I make sure he has what he needs, and so he doesn't have to worry, and so it works that way. And so if I were to give anybody advice that's a musician, like, find somebody who understands what you do and supports what you do, because you will find yourself late nights at clubs and gigs and traveling and tired and grumpy and hungry and all of those things, and you want someone by your side that's not going to hassle you about the job that you have to do. So there is that compromise. There's a wisdom in who you form a close relationship with.
Do you think, on the flip side, being the musician that's having to look back at the relationship, the energy from the relationship feeds your career, or do you feel like sometimes you have to feed the energy from your career into the relationship?
Well, I know that for Darren and I, we talk a lot about our marriage comes before the career. It becomes before my role as his booking agent. And sometimes we talk about, okay, I'm not talking as your wife right now. I'm talking as your manager,
Right,
and
right.
vice versa. And he'll remind me, hey, I don't need to hear from my manager right now. I need to hear from my wife, right?
Gotcha. Sure,
so
sure.
figuring out how to make that work and to delineate, and you can do it successfully if you have a really good open communication with
yeah.
your spouse. Most of the time it's not your spouse that's your booking agent and manager, but in our relationship it works really nicely.
Yeah. So you just have to keep the communication open to be able to get through it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So the next bullet is treating others better than they treat you. And I think that has a lot to do with, I don't mind professing my faith. My faith kind of drives the type of person that I feel like I need to be, and just being kind to people in an industry like a music industry where it's cutthroat.
Yes.
And people will stomp all over you and they won't consider you. Regardless of how someone treats you, you always treat them with high integrity, because you never know. They might mature, they might
Right.
change, they might look at you and go, wow, they're successful and they don't have to
Right.
be rude or disrespectful or have lack of integrity and all of those things. And so we have to model what we want our world to be like and what we want
Yes.
the industry to look like. So we work really hard at assuming positive intent when people do things, or just saying, you know what, maybe they're just not there yet in their lives, or maybe they need a mentor.
Right.
And so we work with everybody until we find like maybe we need to separate ourselves from this relationship, and that's okay.
Sure,
You don't have to be rude about it, and you don't have to talk about people, but I think there is some wisdom in just making sure you carry yourself with integrity so that nobody has anything negative to say about you.
Right. Well, and the importance of, when you're in entertainment, a lot of people think about themselves and think about what they're trying to achieve. And I think that, most of them understand that people look up to them, but I don't know that they always understand the impact of that. And so, yeah, being the better man in those situations goes a long way.
Absolutely. And again, other people see and other people talk about you, and if they don't have any ammunition,
Right.
that's great.
Yeah.
Don't give them any
Right.
ammunition.
Right.
My fifth bullet point is be a people person. You have to like people. You have to learn how to talk to people. There are a lot of self-help tips out there of, listen more than you talk. Learn how to ask questions. Be curious about the person that you're talking to. When I go to gigs with my husband, I'm there with a lot of the fans, and they're really, really excited to get an autograph or a picture with Darren, and so I'm standing in line with them, and I'm getting to know who they are, and more about their families, because we're all tied on social media and we talk, and this is another tip to girlfriends and wives of famous or however famous of a musician
sure.
your guy is that you can't get jealous of fans. There's
Right.
beautiful women that come to gigs and they come to shows, and some of them can be disrespectful, but most of the time they're just sincere jazz lovers or music lovers.
Right.
And they're non-threatening, and I think it's really great for them to feel relaxed and say, oh, okay, this is the spouse of the artist. I don't have to worry about like going up to someone that I admire and asking for an autograph. It's like,
Right,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Because there's like
Yeah.
all of these dynamics. So you
Yeah.
have to learn how to navigate through fame, popularity. People want to know personal things about you, and that's just a natural course.
That's a challenge too, isn't it? Because you don't want them to invade, but you want to invite them in.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing as well, I know this is true for me, even not being on the stage, being a people person is not always easy.
It's not.
Especially if you've had a long day, you're on tour, you haven't eaten, maybe the show didn't go the way you wanted it to. And then you have to go out and be nice and supportive and hold your character in front of these folks.
Absolutely.
So-
It takes practice, but you can do it. Keep a smile on your face, be kind and polite, just breathe.
Right.
And respond to emails. We get so many emails and inquiries. You have to respond to everybody in a timely manner. And so those relationship building things and being a people person, because that's how it's our career, it's how we pay the bills.
Right.
So you have to remember to treat people with respect.
Now, in a band situation, coming from a manager perspective, I've noticed that most bands have specific people that do specific jobs. Do you think that that's the best way to do it when you're dealing with fans, or do you think everyone should be involved? I guess, you could run into problems if everybody's pitching in, answering emails, but does that give it a better or worse dynamic when you're responding to fans? Because the Beatles, as an example, someone might really think Ringo's the best, somebody else might really think Paul's the best. Do each of those members need to respond to fans for that reason, to support their fan base, or is it kind of not generic, but kind of standard response?
Sure. I think the bigger you get, the more difficult it is to individually respond. It becomes almost impossible. So you do need to have someone you can rely on that has that strength and leverage that strength in order to be able to communicate, because social media is getting so much bigger now.
Right, absolutely.
And keeping up with social media and all of the avenues, you have to have someone that has the capacity to do that and do it well, so that you don't lose fans.
Right.
So.
And still be able to keep it personal, because that seems to be what they want, that personal connection.
Right. And Darren's really good at saying, hey, I'm going to forward this email to you. Can you respond?
Oh, okay.
So we have that kind
sure.
of tag team thing where we have access to each other's emails. We share the same, password. So I can take some of the load off without him having to ask. But a lot of times, if something really important comes in and he can't get to it, he'll forward me the email.
Gotcha. So you have to have you have to have a team that you can trust.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Number 6 was say less. There are a lot of rumors. There's a lot of telephone that happens in the industry.
Right.
And people that you think you've had relationships with for many, many years, and then you'll hear, well, so-and-so said this about you, or, and it doesn't sound like something that they would say. And then how do you work through it? Do you confront this person that you care about that's in your, in your social circle or professional circle, or do you let it go? But you just have to be careful about what you say, because you have to always anticipate that whatever you say about somebody else is going to get back to them.
Right.
99% of the time it does.
Right.
I think some people would be really surprised to know what we've been told that someone else has said that we thought was a colleague, in the industry.
Right.
And once again, that goes back to the relationships and just being really careful and being professional and having integrity, because you never know how deep the relationships go, and everybody's connected, and it's the crab mentality in the music industry.
Right.
Everybody wants to make it to the top, but you don't have to put somebody down in order to be successful.
Right.
So I would just caution people, don't trust anybody with negative information, and whatever you say, just anticipate that person's going to hear it from somebody else.
Right. So always make sure you approach everything in a positive manner, in an uplifting way, so that there's no way for it to turn into something else.
Yes, and you just have to temper the amount of information that you put out there.
How long does it take to figure that out?
I think after you've been burned a couple of times, you go, ouch, I don't like how that feels. I probably should not do that.
Right.
I think everybody's journey is different.
Even going into it knowing that you have to be careful, do you end up with a pretty hefty learning curve on that? Where
oh
wow, I didn't think that was going to happen.
Absolutely. I think, and sometimes you could say something and it can be misinterpreted, even when, and by the time, that telephone thing, by the time it comes back around, it's like, well, that's not really what I said, or that's not what I meant, or it's out of context. So you have to be really careful. Don't put stuff in writing.
Right.
If you have an issue with somebody, it's better to pick up the phone and call them and clear the air and heal a relationship, because it's so much better to have those relationships. Because a lot of times, Darren's really good at this because he's a peacemaker. So he'll call and say, hey, I've been told by a couple of different people that you've said this, what's going on? And just confronted that person, and either they can receive that and heal the relationship, or they don't, and then where you stand with someone. Right. So, but I just think that we can do better in general as a community of just not talking badly about people. Yeah, I completely agree. It's one of the things that we've talked about on a lot of our shows is always be there to make it beneficial for everybody.
You know, nobody gets kicked to the curb. Nobody gets left out. Lift everybody up because everybody wants to win.
Right.
And that way everybody can win.
Everybody can win.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
My seventh bullet is build a high capacity for work. When you are trying to be successful and working really hard, you're going to have to put in a lot of grunt work at the beginning. You're going to have to sometimes perform in gigs that don't pay as well, or you're going to have to stay up really late. You're going to have to pay for your own promotion.
Right.
You're going to have to do whatever you can in order to get your name out there, and that's good because a lot of people can't afford a manager
Right.
or a booking agent at first, or really high glossy, marketing paraphernalia, right? So you're going to have to build a high capacity for doing a lot of behind the scenes work, but then also going on stage and performing. And so, that's hours and hours a week to start to get your name out there.
I think most artists know that it's not a 40-hour-a-week job. It's not, you don't get weekends off and whatever. But I think a lot of them, even knowing that going into it, don't realize actually this is a 24/7 job, and sometimes I'll get a break and sometimes I won't.
Yeah, very few people have been discovered and shot straight to the top.
Right, right.
So most people have to grind and grunt and do a lot of work in order to be successful.
And do you feel like that work includes knowing every aspect of what you're trying to do?
I think you should. And thank goodness for internet and Google. You can read a lot of free information. You can find a lot of YouTube videos that talk about the business side. And there's a lot of great advice out there. So it takes time then to research and ask questions and talk to, I think the best thing is to talk to club managers.
Interesting.
Because they're the ones that get so many inquiries from bands and booking agents and ask, how do you pick who you're going to bring in? How do you decide what you're going to pay? And then look at their bills and look and see, when I say bills, look at who they're bringing in on there. Some people might misinterpret that.
Get the lingo right.
Get the lingo right. And see, who did they bring in 2017 on their calendar, and what was the common thread, and then go to their websites and look at their websites and see. So you can find a lot of inexpensive ways to market yourself and make it look nice. I mean, you really don't want to sacrifice quality. I don't know if I put that on my bullet, but I will tag this on of the quality of what you put out there. If your friend has a keyboard and a computer and a laptop and some speakers in their basement, you probably don't want to present that to a big booking agent. I mean, if that's really all you have, but it's better to save and put out a quality, like 1 or 2 songs, and try to put out an album for $1,000.
Right.
And the quality is not, because you're competing against those people who do have budgets. So take the time to make it look nice, do it right, and that way, people will pay more attention.
Right. And then they'll take you more seriously.
Yeah, they'll take you more seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
Which leads into my next one. Be curious and always learn. You're never going to have made it. We are friends with extremely famous and successful artists from all over the world. And they are always learning, and they're always giving credit to other people, and they're always asking questions, and they've just learned because of their wisdom. They're successful for a reason, because they're constantly learning, and they're being a risk taker, and they don't act like they know it all, but they're very wise and they're very generous with their knowledge. So find a mentor, find somebody that's willing to give you the time. It's hard to find somebody who's, because the access, you don't necessarily have access to someone that you idolize, quote unquote, right?
Right.
But you should never idolize anybody. But
that's a whole nother
That's a whole nother topic. Someone you respect that has walked the walk. So start locally and just learn as much as you can, research.
Do you find the more you learn, the more you want to learn?
Absolutely.
it piques curiosity just by
Absolutely.
learning. Yeah.
One click on the internet leads to a next click,
Right.
leads to and you could it's never ending.
Yeah.
And then when people start to see that you're sincerely trying to learn, they generously start to give you advice. There are so many people have taken me under their wing and said, "Oh, you're managing Darren now. Let me help you."
Oh, cool.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
they're so nice. Let me give you some advice, and
So-
then after.
So just showing that you're putting the effort in can be beneficial, even if you're not really achieving the success of it yourself. If you're putting the effort in, you can still see
People
benefits. That's
pay
awesome.
attention to that kind of character
Yeah.
in you. They know they're not wasting their time with someone
Sure.
who's not either not going to listen or who isn't going to take it seriously. And that's another thing, when you're starting out, you can't really convince somebody to give you an hour or two of their time if they don't really feel like you're going to use that or if it's beneficial for them.
Right. Right.
So-
Yeah, you want to make sure that it's always beneficial for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Which leads me to number 9, be a risk taker. And I think when you're a young artist, a lot of times when you're writing your own music, you have in your soul what you want to share.
Right.
And then you start getting into the industry and seeing, oh, well, the industry doesn't really like what I'm doing. The industry is asking me to change what I'm doing
Right.
in order to fit the industry in the market. So you have to decide, am I going to stay true to my music, even if that means I'll never be heard on the radio, even if that means I never get a gig? Or am I going to compromise my music to fit what the industry is saying they want? And that's an individual decision.
Can you do both? Does it depend on the genre you're in or the approach you take? How does that work? Because I know I listen to so many different types of music, and some of them probably would never be played on the radio, but they're successful artists still. But did they even compromise to get to that level? Or did they just get lucky that what they were doing at the time happened to be acceptable?
Well, I think it really depends on when you put your music out there, and if it's not received, then you know.
Sure.
If you're sending it to labels and artists, big artists to hear, and you don't get a response, then you start to think about, well, maybe it's not up to what the industry wants.
Right.
And then you have to say, that's okay. I'm going to play in a little club. If there's 100 people in the audience, then that's good enough for me. Or you can say, okay, maybe I need to move to Nashville or New York or LA and learn how to compose music that is more fitting for the genre. And so when I say like radio, like Sirius XM, how are you gonna get big and how are you gonna get paid? I mean, that's the only way you really get paid.
Right.
You're either getting paid on the front end performing a show, or you're getting paid royalties.
Right.
And so that's a whole nother show.
Yeah, that's an entire, that's a couple shows.
That's a couple of shows. So I would just say, don't be discouraged. If it's your music and it's your voice, then you do you. But if you're trying to be famous, that's a whole nother
different
thinking.
approach. Yeah. Okay. And that makes sense. I think a lot of people they look at the big names and they go, well, I could do that. And they don't know that, maybe that's not where they started, and what risks and compromises did they have to take to get there?
Absolutely. Once you get big, then you can almost do whatever you want because you're already famous and you've done it. And then if you decide you want to do something different and throw it out there, but that is a big risk for a big artist too.
It is. But at least you know that they know you'll sell, and so you can take some of those challenges, and they're going to let you have a little bit of
Yes.
Yes.
The final point that I wanted to make, and this is a big one, is to always acknowledge those who've helped you. You never want to have the frame of mind that you've made it on your own. I did it. I hear this a lot. I did this on my own. What I think people are really saying is like, I've put in the work. And yes, you have put in the work. But you never believe that you did on your own. There was someone who believed in you. There was someone who mentored you. There was someone who gave you a chance. There's someone who bought your music. So always acknowledge the people, no matter how successful you've been, that different people have helped you along the way, because they'll remember, because the industry is really small. And if you become egotistical and you start verbalizing, I did this on my own and nobody helped me, People don't like that.
And then people don't help you.
Right, and then people don't help you. And like, okay,
Yeah.
let's see what it's like doing it
Right.
on your own.
Yeah.
Nobody, not a single person is successful on their own.
Right.
And then I will say this, go back one more time to my faith. It's that, for us, what we see is that our success is not necessarily based on other people, because sometimes people can threaten you and say, well,
Sure.
I'm not going to do this or that for you. And that's okay, because for us, we know that if we stay true and have integrity, that it's not specific people that help us be successful, but it's making sure we continue to walk in integrity, that we're continuing to work hard, we're putting good music out there,
Right.
and letting that speak for itself, and not worrying about the people who think that they can make or break your career.
Right.
That's kind of what I want to
Right.
clarify that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and there's different types of success too, aren't there? You can have financial success. You can have I guess if you want to call it success of fame. Sometimes I don't know that that's success.
They're not the same.
Right.
Being rich
Yeah.
and being famous are not the
Right.
same thing.
And then there's success that you just have within yourself that says, hey, I had a goal and I achieved that goal.
Absolutely.
So success is a whole, we could do a thing on that too.
Sure could.
So, and that's really cool. The way you had this set up, I mean, number 10 goes right back into number 1. It's a really cool cycle that can be applied to everything, whether you're a graphic designer, a mom, a stage performer, a manager. These apply to everything. And I think that's really important because, talking to a lot of the bands that I've had on, they touch on some of these things, and I think that they all want to achieve all of these things. But sometimes I think bands don't understand that they can apply to everything they do.
Absolutely.
And if you figure that out, then you've got a great tool.
Just be cool.
You are cool.
I try. You're cool.
We had a couple of side things on here I just want to touch on. And that is the importance of imaging and marketing.
Yes. So from the look to the title of your album to what we're going to hear. So this is a perfect example that the photo and the title and what you're going to hear all align. So you don't want to put a package together that's disjunct.
Gotcha.
And it's like, does that make any sense? Because people listen with their eyes and they look at photos and they get a perception of the image of who you are if they don't know you. So you have to think about everything from clothing to your makeup to everything when you're creating an image for yourself.
Gotcha. How do you decide that? Do you try to follow kind of the genre that you're trying to be part of, or do you try to really personalize it so that you stand out from that genre?
Well, you have to do a little bit of both, because when you look at albums over, decades,
Yes.
and you're like, okay, well, that's been done, and how do I come up with a different title for a song?
Right,
All the title,
right.
and so you have to get really, really creative. And the people that are the most creative end up being the most successful and rise to the top, because we're living in this fast society.
Yeah.
And the lights and the glitz, and so you have to get people's attention. So taking your time, again, it depends on your budget. And
Sure.
sometimes people have, can my cousin Joe, take my picture for me on their cheap camera, and then that goes to the graphic, and it's like, so you have to take the time to do it right, because that's your final product. Get advice and look at some of the best album covers and look at some of the titles of the most successful people and listen to their music and figure out, there's a concept for this album. It's not just a bunch of hodgepodge songs.
Right.
There's a thread.
Right.
And everything aligns, and that's how you get credibility, because things make sense.
Touch really quick on pay to play.
Yes, when you're starting out.
This is such a challenge for so many artists.
People want so bad to just be out there and share their music that they will sometimes pay money to play. Some clubs pay better than others.
Right.
And so if you're not a well-known name, you might not get a premium spot at a club, and so they'll pay you, $100 for the night,
Right.
or $300 or $400 for your whole band. Well, you're not making any money, and you have to think about, hauling your gear and the practice time and the hours and writing the charts for your band and food for the day, and do you have to travel? Do you need gas money and hotels?
Right.
So a lot of times musicians starting off go broke, and they are paying what we call pay to play, but they might have a lot of gigs on their Facebook,
Right.
and it might appear that they're successful when, then you have to define what success is.
Right.
If you're broke and you're not actually getting paid, is that success? So I would just say to the fans, just be aware of how much you're giving to an industry that maybe you're not reaping financial benefits
Right.
for.
Right. Yeah. I know a lot of artists who are, working a 40-hour job, and that's how they're paying for their music, because it's
Right.
the music isn't paying for itself.
Correct. If you want to make music, be a songwriter. I will say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where the money's at.
Yeah, for sure. That brings me to, well, two things, and they kind of tie together, actually. And that is, how do you figure out what the value of your art is? But also, why are you doing it? Is that the value? Or, there's so many ways to look at it. I value my music. I don't care if I get paid. Or the value of my music is all of these things I've done into it, so this is what I want in return.
Sure. If the music industry is your passion, I think you should follow it, because that's your passion and
Right.
that's your voice, and you have something that you want to say to the world. And there will definitely be people who want to listen to what you have to say.
Yeah.
But valuing, that's a subjective thing. It's really going to depend on the fans. If the fans want to hear what you have to say, if fans come to your shows and they're buying your music, then you know that, and you get bigger and bigger gigs. But why you're doing it, only the artist can answer that. And yes, like you said, a lot of people have a primary job,
Right.
and then they can gig on the weekends. Some people are fortunate enough to have benefactors that
Right.
will sponsor, their albums, which can be into the thousands and thousands of dollars for a high quality album, or who will subsidize them while they're practicing.
Right.
And that's a wonderful thing. We should bring back benefactors.
Yes,
There's a
for
time where
sure,
there was,
yeah. Yeah.
that was a thing.
Yeah.
And there still are a lot of benefactors out there who just love the music and want to invest in rising artists. And so that's another thing that you can look for as you're growing, so that you're not starving
Yeah,
artist, or doing things out of lack of integrity in order to survive.
Right.
But it does come all the way back down to, is it worth it to you, what you're doing and the amount of money and time that you're spending? You have to make that decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that people pay attention to what we were saying today, because this is so beneficial, and beneficial for, it doesn't matter what kind of music you're doing, doesn't matter what kind of art you're in, these things can really, really help. And you present it in such a nice way.
Thank
This
you.
is awesome.
Thank you.
So thanks again for coming up. I want you to take a second, plug for your husband,
Okay,
and then we'll wrap this
sure.
up.
So Darren Rahn is a multi-Grammy nominated international contemporary jazz saxophonist and record producer. He has over 30 #1 radio hits, and we've lost count of how many top 10s.
Nice.
So you can inquire about Darren Rahn for production or for performing on his website at www.darrenrahn.com. That's DARRENRAHN.com. His fifth solo album, Sonic Boom, came out in 2016 and went #1 on the Billboard. And he also had the 2016 Song of the Year, which we're
cool.
really excited about.
Yeah.
And then he just came out with, on his own record label, Side 2 Records. And if you know anything about back in the day when we had records, all the good music
Right.
was on the second side. So we call it Side 2 Records. And he just came out with this inspirational album, Hymns from the Heart, some of his most favorite hymns. It's very peaceful. You can meditate to this. But Sonic Boom, you can listen to his music on iTunes, Amazon, YouTube, Pandora, Sirius XM, Watercolors 66, anywhere you can find
Cool.
us.
And we're going to have to get him in as well.
Absolutely. We'll get
So,
him in.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this edition of Futurartist Records Presents. I hope you got some good stuff out of this. Take notes, get your pencil, get your paper, get your phone, whatever you use. Make sure you like and share. Make sure you look into Darren and what he's doing. And make sure you subscribe to this program. And I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Michael Hartsock. Thanks for watching Future Artist Records Presents.